The sea off Brighton that winter looked tired, its color, a dull grey blue, as though the waves themselves were burdened with secrets. It was there, in a city known for its brightness and bustle, that a story of deception would quietly unfold. The case of Dr. Malcolm Reeves began, as most crimes of ego do, with admiration and ended in disgust. Dr. Malcolm Reeves was a man whose reputation gleamed brighter than the surgical instruments he once wielded. He had everything: the trust of his patients, the admiration of his colleagues, and the kind of quiet confidence that drew envy and respect in equal measure. But behind the polished smile and immaculate white coat hid a mind sinking under the weight of debt, desperation, and pride. On December 14, 2022, police officers responding to a distress call from his home would find him pale, trembling, and surrounded by the unmistakable smell of antiseptic and blood. He claimed he'd been attacked. The truth, however, would be far stranger, and far darker. For years, Dr. Malcolm Reeves had been the pride of the Royal Sussex County Hospital. Colleagues called him the surgeon with steady hands. Patients called him a miracle worker. He performed complex vascular surgeries that others refused, and he did it with elegance, the kind of surgeon whose very presence in the room brought calm. But admiration masked decay. Behind his calm, Malcolm faced mounting gambling debts and the collapse of an investment scheme he'd sunk his savings into. His wife, Helen Reeves, a graceful woman in her late 40s with auburn hair worn in a soft chignon and warm hazel eyes often framed by concern, had no idea how close they were to losing their home. When the hospital began investigating financial irregularities within the surgery department, irregularities Malcolm himself had quietly caused, his world began to crack. He knew exposure was only a matter of time. So he began to plan something unthinkable, a way to vanish behind sympathy, a way to turn his downfall into pity and profit. It began with a limp. Malcolm told colleagues he'd been having leg pain, likely a vascular issue. Ironic for a vascular surgeon. Soon after, he went on medical leave, claiming he could barely walk. To everyone else, it looked like karma, the proud doctor now facing the frailty he used to cure. But what no one knew was that Malcolm was orchestrating his own injury. He began small, controlled lacerations, self-inflicted and disinfected with surgical precision. Over months, the wounds worsened, and he presented them to doctors he once mentored, feigning surprise at the rapid deterioration. Helen begged him to stop working and rest. Her hazel eyes, full of love and confusion, searched his face for truth, but Malcolm was deep in his own performance. The eventual accident would come one late November night, when he appeared at the hospital's emergency department claiming he'd fallen in his garage and crushed his leg beneath equipment. Within days, he insisted on an amputation. The doctors, trusting his medical judgment, obliged. He walked out weeks later with a prosthetic and a £750,000 insurance payout pending approval. Detective Laura Kent, a sharp, composed woman in her late 30s with short chestnut hair, pale blue eyes, and a trench coat always buttoned to the top, had seen her share of strange frauds, but the Reeves case intrigued her. The insurance company flagged inconsistencies in Malcolm's claim. His medical report was oddly self-authored, and the injury photos lacked metadata. Laura visited his Brighton home, a handsome Georgian townhouse near the seafront. Helen greeted her with hesitant politeness, her auburn hair pinned neatly as always, though her trembling hands betrayed stress. Malcolm, propped in a wheelchair, welcomed her with feigned warmth. He looked fragile, wrapped in a wool cardigan, his prosthetic leg visible beside the chair. But Laura's instincts prickled. The details were too tidy, his story rehearsed. A single moment stood out. When she asked him about the night of the accident, he reached for his water glass with the same steady surgeon's hand that once held scalpels, not the hand of a man broken by trauma. Weeks passed, and Laura's quiet investigation turned into obsession. She reviewed surveillance footage, interviewed colleagues, and cross-checked medical supply purchases. That's when she found it. Invoices for specialized antiseptics and anesthetics ordered to Malcolm's home address, dated months before his accident. She visited his former colleague, Dr. Rajesh Patel, a compact, bespectacled man in his early 40s with neatly trimmed beard and dark, intelligent eyes. He confessed that Malcolm had been distant, paranoid, and strangely fascinated by tissue necrosis. The final piece came when forensic techs analyzed his garage. Beneath a false floorboard, they found a small portable sterilizer, the kind used in surgical theaters. Laura knew then. Malcolm hadn't fallen. He'd performed on himself. When she returned with a warrant, Helen collapsed in tears. Malcolm stayed silent, his face pale as plaster. The steady hands that once healed had destroyed him. During interrogation, Malcolm remained poised, too poised. The detectives presented him with the evidence, but he deflected with medical jargon and disdain. Laura stayed calm, asking simple, human questions. Why, Dr. Reeves? You had everything. Hours later, something in him broke. The proud posture deflated. He stared at the table for a long time, then quietly said, "Because I couldn't stand to be ordinary again." He admitted to orchestrating everything, from self-injury to false documentation, hoping to claim insurance, move abroad, and reinvent himself. It wasn't greed, he said. It was control. He couldn't bear watching life move without him at the center of it. The trial in early 2023 drew massive attention. Newspapers called it the surgeon who operated on himself. The prosecution presented damning evidence, medical supplies, digital records, and his own confession. Helen sat in the courtroom every day, her auburn hair loose for the first time, her eyes hollowed by betrayal. When the verdict was read, guilty of fraud, falsifying medical reports, and obstruction of justice, she didn't look at him. Malcolm Reeves was sentenced to 7 years in prison. As he was led away, he looked back once, not at Helen, but at Detective Kent, with something between hatred and relief. Outside, the press swarmed. Brighton had birthed another headline monster. Today, the house on Marine Parade where Dr. Reeves once lived stands empty. The blinds are drawn, the mail uncollected. Neighbors pass quickly, reluctant to speak his name. Detective Laura Kent was later promoted, but she still drives past that street sometimes. "It's strange," she once said in an interview. "He didn't do it for money. He did it to feel in control of something. That's the part that chills me." Malcolm Reeves served only 4 years before being released on good behavior. Where he went after that, no one knows. Some say he moved north, some say abroad. But in Brighton, whenever the fog drifts low over the sea, people still whisper about the doctor who performed his final operation on himself.